I was 41 when I realized my closet was a museum. Not for clothes, although there were plenty of those, but for versions of myself I visited and never took home. On the back rail, tucked near blazers I wore to client meetings and jeans that carried the shape of my week, hung 2 dresses that had never met the city, a teal slip with a quiet bias cut and a black sheath that behaved like a secret. Between them, a hanger sighed under the weight of a denim jacket with a lipstick print so small it might have been an accident. My shoes were honest, which is to say practical. Ankle boots that could survive a November sidewalk, sandals with a good relationship to arch support. In a drawer, I kept tights and pantyhose I wore under skirts to work, sheer tan and black, and the occasional charcoal that made me feel like a well-edited sentence. In another drawer, I kept nothing but a question. The question had roots I could trace if I wanted to, like the kind of ivy you think is decorative until it cracks brick. I had always loved the theater of clothes, the way a seam could change your posture, the way a color could take your temperature and adjust it 2 degrees toward brave. I had also always loved men, stubbled faces and big hands, the calm gravity some of them carry like furniture. When I was younger and the world was louder in my head, I tried to ignore the part of me that quickened whenever I saw anyone, man, woman, person, pull on something silky, something that made the light behave. Later, when the noise dimmed and my life took the shape of my own choosing, I learned to say the truth with less apology. I'm Mira, 42 now, project manager for a design firm that loves white space the way I love a clean morning. I live alone in a 2-bedroom in Lakeview with a thrift store bar cart and a habit of feeding my friends too well. On Thursdays, I go to drag night. It started as a dare I gave myself. The queer bars in my neighborhood were easy to find. If you were standing on the sidewalk looking for joy, the neon would find you. Every other Thursday, I'd walk past a place called the Thistle, tiny, low ceiling, springs in the floorboards, and hear a voice on the mic that made courage sound contagious. When I finally went in, I sat at the back and ordered club soda with a wedge of lime because I wanted my nerves sober. The queens painted the air with jokes and glitter. The room swayed like a ship, and I felt at once like a tourist and a cousin. When the host, a 7-foot-tall miracle named Madame Mayday, asked if there were any first-timers, I lifted a hand like a student who knows the answer and fears the sound of her own name. "Welcome, sweetheart," she said, pointing her champagne flute at me. "You're safe. We keep our knives mostly for contour." I wasn't there to collect men. I told myself that early, and then I broke the sentence into smaller words and examined each one. The truth was both humbler and stranger. I wanted to stand in a room where masculinity and femininity were not locked closets but open windows, where I could be the kind of woman who loved a man whose legs and sheer pantyhose made me think of long notes on a violin. I wanted a man who didn't flinch at a silk dress or at the sound my heels make on concrete, someone who could carry both energies and call neither a costume. I wanted to see if that person existed outside the fictions I'd written while waiting for the laundry to dry. So I went. Every week, then every week, for 6 months. The Thistle on Thursdays, sometimes the Icicle on Saturdays when I needed a different purple in the lights. You learn the anatomy of a drag night the way you learn a friend's laugh. The pre-show buzz, the lipstick check, the ritual of tips, the tide of the crowd as people elbowed politely toward the stage with singles folded like origami cranes. I learned the regulars by silhouette. There was a couple who dressed like 1963 and Love. A cluster of baby gays who cheered like they'd invented sound. A quiet older man who brought a sketchbook and gave the queens charcoal portraits at the end of the night. Sometimes someone would buy me a drink and ask who I was waiting to meet. I learned to say, "I don't know yet," with a smile that didn't apologize. I went home alone because no spark felt like mine. Men in dresses and men in suits and men in shapeless t-shirts. Kind, funny, beautiful men, but none whose gravity matched my own. The 6th month, on a Thursday that smelled like thaw, I wore the teal slip under my coat like a dare. I had found a pair of kitten heels at a consignment shop that didn't punish my knees, and I practiced walking to the bus stop like a person who didn't need the sidewalk's permission. The Thistle was humid with people. Madame Mayday opened with a Whitney ballad that made the walls learn to breathe a deeper way. The lineup promised chaos and competence. I found my usual corner and my usual club soda. A queen with brows so high they were weather patterns asked if I was dating anyone, and then cackled when I said, "Only my better judgment." I felt capable and lonely, a combination I've learned to live with. He walked in during the second number, a little late, not apologizing. At first I thought he might be a dancer from another club. He had that slight, coiled grace of someone who has rehearsed in unkind mirrors and still loves their reflection. Black blazer, black t-shirt, dark jeans, clean sneakers, nothing that shouted. Then he took off his coat and the light found something the color of smoke under his sleeves. Not tattoos, a length of silk. He was holding a garment bag, but not like a prop, like a promise. He met eyes with the bartender, nodded, and slipped down the side of the room to the tiny hallway where performers enter and exit. I thought nothing of it except everything. Madame Mayday introduced a special guest between numbers, which could mean anything from a drag king visiting from Milwaukee to the owner's nephew's band. A soft debut, she purred, from a friend of a friend, a creature of careful glam. Be intelligent and kind. The music shifted to an instrumental with synths that sounded like a city arriving. He came out in a silver slip dress that skimmed his body like water does stone, the fabric whispering around his thighs. He wore sheer pantyhose, glossy suntan, with a sheen that read like a prayer for knees and calves. The heels were not high, but they were honest, and his legs were the kind that make you believe in stairs as a concept. His makeup refused to tell a single story. Soft, smoky eye, a clean brow, a mouth the color of a pomegranate left out on the counter a day too long. The room did not gasp, because the Thistle is a church that knows how to greet angels, but something in the air changed key. He didn't lip sync. He didn't need to. He moved through the song like he'd inherited the room and wanted to take care of it. I watched the way I had watched the lake once during a storm. Alert, grateful, a little afraid of what I might do if asked. He didn't flirt with the crowd. He made eye contact like a lighthouse. There, reassuring, not beckoning. When he finished, he bowed a bow that didn't apologize for grace, and the crowd did the math quickly. This is not gimmick. This is a person. Tips landed in his hands like mercy. He left without lingering. I didn't meet him that night. I went home and brushed my teeth with the care of a person who has to be ready for whatever dream arrives. The next Thursday, he was there again, this time in a midnight blue wrap dress with black hose and a cheekbone that could slice through an argument. I learned his name in the way you learn any truth here. Someone whispered it. Someone else confirmed it. The bartender repeated it at the door. Gabe. He was not a queen. He didn't take a stage name or sew a character around himself. When people tried to figure him out, they used the imprecise words we all reach for, straight, gender-bendy, cross-dresser, mask femme, crunchy, until he laughed softly and said, "I'm just me. I like silk. I like men sometimes, women sometimes, people plenty. I like my legs in pantyhose. I like the quiet in my body when I get it right." He didn't always perform. Some nights he just watched in jeans and a sweater, face clean, legs doing that casually excellent thing calves do when they remember stairs. We spoke after his third appearance, not because I planned it, but because the bathroom line at the Thistle is a democracy. He stood behind me, garment bag over his shoulder, and I heard his voice before I turned. Warm, Midwestern, smiling without trying to sell anything. "I love your slip," he said, not like a pickup line, but like a compliment that had chosen a precise address. "The color knows you." I laughed, nervous, grateful. "Thank you," I said. "Your dress knows gravity." He laughed, and we were already telling the truth. Outside, in the alley where everyone smokes even if they don't smoke, we talked about hosiery like people talk about sports. Denier, sheen, the difference between glossy and greasy, why some brands think women are taller than time. He said, "I'm a drug rep by day. Lots of hospitals, lots of fluorescent lights. Drag nights make the math balance." I said, "I manage the timelines for people who forget that time has feelings." And he laughed again, and I wanted to hear that sound from other angles. We started meeting on purpose. Not always at the Thistle. There was a bar on Clark with good fries and generous booths. He'd arrive in jeans and a blazer, and then pull a pair of pantyhose from his bag like a magician revealing doves. He'd show me a run he was furious about. I'd show him a hem that was misbehaving. We became two people in a room telling our bodies we were listening. The second week of this, he invited me to his place to show me how he contoured. "I'm not trying to teach you anything," he said, "unless you want it. This is my kitchen table and my mirror, and I make my face here, and if that isn't intimacy, I don't know what is." I brought wine, the kind that comes from a label with an animal on it. He had set up the mirror with the respect one reserves for altars. He showed me how he used a damp sponge to turn foundation into forgiveness. He lined his lips with a pencil like he had studied maps. He asked before he touched me, "Chin? Cheek?" And when he brushed the powder under my eye like he was erasing a bruise, I thought, I do not know what this is yet, but it is good. I worried about loving the idea of him, the way a person worries they only love the skylines in postcards. In bed at night, I interrogated my own desire like a detective with a soft voice. Am I in love with the silk, with the pantyhose, with the way the dress erases and asserts him at the same time? The answer that returned, shy but steady, was yes and more. I loved that he was careful with language, that he carried both masculinity and femininity without goodbye notes to either. I loved the way he ordered at the Thai place, kindly, curious, asking about the spice levels like he was introducing two friends. I loved his calves. Yes, undeniably, the way they looked in tan shears on a stairwell with a cracked tile landing. I also loved his forearms in a t-shirt on a Saturday, how they told me he carried things without needing witnesses. We kissed after a show in April, which is a dangerous month for Chicagoans who haven't seen sun in a while. We were walking back to my place because the buses had decided to simulate scarcity and force us into romance. He wore a camel coat. Beneath it, I knew, was a silk dress the color of eggplant when you cut it open. On the corner of Belmont and Sheffield, in the lemon light of a street lamp that pretended not to watch, he stopped and asked, "May I?" like a dancer asking the floor's permission. I said yes, and the kiss was a city, warm, layered, a little impatient. His lipstick tasted like the word red. He didn't press me against anything. He didn't need to. I felt the silk under his coat when I slid a hand to his waist, and I felt my body say, yes. Then we laughed, because strangers in a rideshare cheered from the back seat like we were a game-winning shot. Dating in our 40s was not the sprint it had been in our 20s. We asked questions with fewer disguises. He told me he'd tried men, he'd tried women, he'd tried being alone for longer than anyone recommended. I like women, he said, who know what they're doing and like what I'm doing. I like men sometimes like I like thunderstorms, gorgeous, a little loud, not permanent. I told him about my closet museum, my 6 months of showing up, my old habit of loving the wrong kind of certainty. We went slow, then we didn't. We told each other what fabric calms us, what words never feel like ours. The first time he stayed over, he took his makeup off like a ritual that deserves witnesses. We lay on our backs and listed the songs we were embarrassed to love. He fell asleep with his leg over mine, and I thought, this is what happens when two bodies get the memo. We made a pair that confused and delighted strangers. On Sundays, we'd walk to the farmer's market, me in jeans and a sweater, him in a silk midi skirt with opaque tights and Chelsea boots, or vice versa, switching energies like jackets in spring. Kids stared sometimes. Their parents looked at the kids like they were trying not to make a memory. We kept it easy. When we fought, it was over small things. His pride about directions, my instinct to overschedule joy. When we loved, it was in detail. He'd bring home a new pair of sheer pantyhose and hold them up to the light like stained glass. I'd present a silk blouse like a book I knew he'd like. We learned our sizes in each other's clothes, which felt like a better kind of intimacy than passwords. We didn't rush a proposal. It grew like a plant we both remembered to water. The night he asked, we were at the Thistle because it felt right to bring the beginning back to the middle. Madame Mayday, who had long since adopted us, my favorite mixed media couple, she called us, handed him the mic after a number, and he said, "I don't like speeches," which was a lie, "but I like promises," which was true. He knelt, not because he is old-fashioned, but because knees and pantyhose can carry ceremony with more elegance than anything else. The ring was simple, a circle that didn't need to prove anything by shouting. I said yes, and the room behaved like family, loud, loving, slightly tipsy about it. Later, back home, we lay on the rug and counted our breaths until we believed ourselves. Our wedding was not a drag show and not a church. It was a garden behind an old brick building with chairs that didn't match and flowers that pretended they'd grown here on purpose. Gabe wore a tailored midnight blue suit with a silk camisole beneath and sheer tan hose under his trousers, because this is who he is. And pantyhose, it turns out, are a kind of private vow. I wore the black sheath from my closet museum and a veil I'd found in a vintage store that didn't try to make me disappear. We wrote vows that didn't use metaphors we couldn't cash. I promise to ask before I touch your eyeliner, I said. I promise to fold your slips like maps, he said. Our parents cried. Madame Mayday caught the bouquet and threatened to sue if it bruised. In the weeks after, our home learned new routines. 2 garment racks appeared in the second bedroom like twin cities. We bought a small set of drawers just for hosiery. Sheer, matte, opaque, gloss, fishnet for nights we felt like night. He taught me how to hand wash silk without turning it into sadness. I taught him how to sew a button that would survive a commute. We found that dressing up together did not always mean leaving the house. Some Thursdays we still went to the Thistle, and sometimes he performed if the city had been cruel that week, and he needed to make its story. Other nights we turned on a record and waltzed badly in the kitchen, 2 people in stockings and socks, dress and robe, or both in jeans, because love doesn't require costume, it just permits it. The neighbors learned not to be surprised by our laundry line. Slips and button-downs, 2 kinds of jackets, tights drying like polite flags. When people asked how we made it work, I wanted to say courage and snacks. What I said was this. We decided early to stop using the word normal as a yardstick. We swapped it for kind and true and fun. When I felt embarrassed, not by him, but by the world's assumption that I should be, he waited for me to find my courage without sulking. When he felt scrutinized in public, I adjusted our route, or took his hand, or cracked a joke about our matching calves. On the train, kids sometimes asked questions their parents were too polite to ask. Why is that man wearing pantyhose? A boy once shouted with the pure curiosity of the very young. Because they feel nice and look good and make stairs easier, Gabe said, and the boy nodded as if he'd just learned how zippers work. We have hard days. There are mornings when makeup feels like a mask and not a canvas, when silk feels like maintenance and not joy. There are times I want a man in the most conventional sense, a flannel shirt and unremarkable jeans and a kiss that tastes like Monday, and he gives me that and teases me for how quickly I ruin a flannel by washing it like a silk. There are times he wants the safety of invisibility, and I want to be seen, and we negotiate like diplomats who believe in the treaty. Our fights still end in detail. I hear you. I need time. You're right about the shoes. And I'm sorry I made the kitchen into a dressing room when you needed it to be a kitchen. We make up by cooking together, or by sitting shoulder to shoulder on the couch with our phones off and our legs touching, his in sheers, mine in bare January, both of us telling the room, look, here are 2 kinds of softness that don't apologize for one another. On our first anniversary, we threw a party at the Thistle. We asked Madame Mayday to host because we know our origin story the way people know grace, by who was there when it arrived. Friends came in whatever made them feel like they belonged in their bodies. Men wore skirts, women wore tuxes, everyone wore delight. At one point, Gabe and I slipped in the tiny hallway near the back where performers paint their faces and say good luck in 3 languages. He lifted the edge of my hem to fix a crooked clasp, his fingers quick and gentle. I smoothed the seam on his hose where it had twisted a little at his ankle, not because anyone would notice, but because I would. And care is like that, pointless to the untrained eye, essential to the person who asked. For a second, we stood forehead to forehead, 2 people in love and in costume and in none, and the room outside cheered for someone else, and we cheered for whatever we'd made between us. I still visit the museum of my closet sometimes, not because I miss the old exhibitions, but to give thanks for the new ones. The teal slip sees daylight now and gets lipstick on the hanger sometimes. The black sheath learned how to laugh. The drawer with the question has become a drawer with answers. Yes, and also yes. The denim jacket with the kiss print knows it was no accident. On my worst days, when the world feels like a hallway with too many bad fluorescent lights, I imagine the first moment I saw Gabe in that silver dress, the way he moved like gravity had chosen him, and I feel my shoulders remember a better posture. On my best days, when we take the stairs 2 at a time because the elevator is busy and we are not, I watch his calves and think, unironically, thank you for these legs, dear universe, and the silk that loves them, and the man who loves me. We didn't find each other because a bar is a wishing well. We found each other because we kept showing up, and when the spark arrived, we didn't scare it away with performance. If you come to the Thistle on a Thursday, you might see us in the corner. We're the pair sharing fries in a compact mirror, my hand on his knee, his hand on my ring like it tells time. On stage, a queen will sing a ballad that makes sense of the week, and the floorboards will complain kindly about the weight we put on them. After a while, the lights go up and the room looks ordinary again, and we walk home as if the night had given us an excellent reason to keep going, which of course it did, because this is a love story. People ask if it was fate. I prefer smaller words. Patience is one, curiosity is another, trust and leg day and good hosiery and laughter that forgives. I like the way silk makes us both stand up straighter. I like that we belong to a little community where the bartender knows our names and the host calls me Mrs. Mixed Media and asks how the pantry is doing because she remembers everything. I like that our marriage is a project that leaves room for costume changes without changing the plot. And I like most of all that when we close the door and put on whatever makes us feel like we survived and will again, we look at each other and see no contradiction at all. We're just us. He in sheer pantyhose and a dress sometimes, me in whatever answers the light. We dress up together because it makes ordinary nights feel like they were paying attention, and then we take it off and put on pajamas, and the love in the room doesn't alter a single seam. This is not a lesson for anyone else's body. It's simply how ours learned to speak and kept practicing until the language felt like home. 6 months of going every week, almost giving up. And then one night, the door opened not to a stage, but to a person. And he had the exact legs I'd imagined believing in, and the exact heart I needed him to have. The rest is wedding cake, laundry, lipstick-stained mugs, making the bed, and making plans. The rest is us. And if you're standing on the sidewalk outside a bar you haven't entered yet, listening to the sound inside, and taking inventory of your courage, here is what I would say, standing beside you in kitten heels that won't betray my ankles. You don't have to know who you'll meet. It is enough, sometimes, to meet yourself, the version who says yes to light and silk, and the brave idea that someone else might want both your softness and your spine. When you walk in, the room will not change its mind about you. It will keep being itself, and so slowly will you.